Okay, devotees, Hare Krishna. So tonight is our 62nd night of a Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam. So welcome. Oh my gosh. Oh my Lord. Anyway, excuse me, everyone. It's just a bit weird sometimes. All right, anyway, yeah. So we are devotees. We are in the 15th chapter of the first canto. And it's titled The Pandavas Retire Timely. And it describes, you've got to do this better, I tell you. Whew. All right, anyway. Yeah, so Pandavas retire timely after the departure of Lord Krishna. We were reading all about Maharaj Yudhisthira, Arjuna, and their concerns, or Yudhisthira's concerns about whether the Lord had departed or not, because Narada said he would. But he didn't, Yudhisthira didn't know. Then Arjuna came back, and Yudhisthira questioned him very pointedly. And so then Arjuna said that yes, he's gone. So we got up to we finished verse 12 last night, so we go on with verse 13 in the first section, which goes up, I think it's to verse 21. Yeah, and it's Arjuna explaining his feelings on the departure of the Lord. So here we go, verse 13. This is Arjuna speaking. When I stayed for some days as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly demigods, including King Indradev, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with a Gandiva bow, to kill the demon named Nivata Kavacha. O king, descendant of Ajameda, at the present moment, I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. Yes, so that's interesting. There's a purport here. Not a big purport, but it's something there that the demigods, of course, the demigods are generally much more powerful and more intelligent than regular human beings. But they were in a certain situation where this demon, Nivata Kavacha, was harassing them. So, but they knew that Arjuna had the Gandiva bow, which was empowered by Lord Krishna. So therefore, they called on him to come and protect them from this Nivata Kavacha demon, which he did. But it was only because that bow was empowered by Lord Krishna that Arjuna was able to defeat this demon and protect all the demigods. So, but now he's lost the association of Lord Krishna, as he says, I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he feels that he's lost so much power. Yeah. Because a devotee, the Lord can empower devotees to whatever degree he likes. And even Prabhupada mentions here that it's possible for the Lord to empower his devotee to the point where the devotee is as powerful as the Lord. I mean, when the Lord empowers a devotee, it's not always to that degree, but it can be. It can also be to just a much lesser degree or whatever, as the Lord feels suitable. But then when the Lord withdraws his power, then, particularly in the case here of Arjuna, he feels he's become powerless. Yeah. Right, okay, so verse 14. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it. And only by his grace was I able to regain the cows. The cows. Is that the correct term? That's what it says in the Bhagavatam. Anyway, I don't see anything which says cows. We'd have to look in the actual book of the Bhagavatam to see if that's correct, because it sounds strange that he was able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings by killing them, helmets which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. So, right, so there's a purport here, not a long, oh, okay, so cows, yeah, so it's cows. In the purport, cows are mentioned. So, of course, well, on the Kaurava side, there were many great warriors, commanders, like Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, Karna, and generally they were at least as powerful as Arjuna, if not more powerful. But by Krishna's grace, Arjuna defeated them all of them. Yes, and they were all killed. So, as Prabhupada says, he managed to kill them one after another without difficulty. And because these different kings and powerful warriors were being killed one by one, and some of them were commanders of the whole army, like Bhishma was the commander, but he was killed. So they had to appoint another commander. Therefore, Prabhupada says there were many changes of commanders on the Kuru side, the Kaurava side. But on the Pandava side, Arjuna was the commander throughout by the grace of Krishna. Yes. So then regarding the cows, it's interesting that when the Pandavas were living at the palace of Virata incognito, the Kauravas picked a quarrel with King Virata and decided to take away his large number of cows. While they were taking away the cows, Arjuna fought with them incognito and was able to regain the cows, along with some booty taken by force, the jewels set on the turbans of the royal order. Right. Yes, so incognito, I don't know how he managed to be incognito because, it'd be hard to be incognito. Unless he had a mask, but I doubt that. Yeah, right, so this was all happening by the grace of Lord Krishna. Okay, so on to 15. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shalya, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate. But he, Lord Sri Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Yes, you see at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the Kauravas are pretty enthusiastic. They blow their conches, but then Krishna blows his, and Arjuna and Bhima, and they lose some of their enthusiasm. But still they picked up their enthusiasm because they outnumbered the Pandavas so much. So they became enthusiastic again. But then again, Krishna, by different arrangements, saw that they were step by step killed. And so the enthusiasm level went down. So effectively, as said here, the Lord withdrew the potency. Where are we? 15:15, right? 15:15. He withdrew their potency. Right, so Srila Prabhupada explains Krishna's Paramatma. He directs everyone in the matter of recollection, forgetfulness, knowledge, absence of intelligence, all psychological activities. That's Bhagavad Gita 15:15. So, and he can increase or decrease someone's duration of life, anyone's. So Prabhupada says that the Lord conducted the battle of Kurukshetra according to his own plan. Yes. And he wanted the Pandavas to win. He wanted Yudhisthira to become the emperor. So directly or indirectly, Lord Krishna killed everyone. There's a verse actually in Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna tells Arjuna, they're all dead already by my plan. They weren't dead yet. They were there ready to fight on the battlefield. But Krishna said, effectively, they're all dead. You just have to fight. And you take the glory for killing them. So, yeah, and as we mentioned, in the opposing party, there were so many great warriors. So it wasn't possible for Arjuna to win unless the Lord helped, Prabhupada says, by every kind of tactic. And Prabhupada makes the point that statesmen, they do all sorts of tactics. But Arjuna didn't have to do any tactics. Krishna did. All Arjuna had to do was fight. So Arjuna didn't have to worry. So Prabhupada concludes the purport, that is the way of devotional service. And verse 16. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Burishrava, Susharma, Shalya, Jayadratha, and Balika, all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Nrsingadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. So first of all, in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada talks about Prahlad. Yeah. That's described in the 7th canto. Of course, Prahlad's only 5, but his father, Hiranyakashipu, became extremely envious of him to the point of not just wanting to kill him, but trying to actually kill him, just because he was a devotee. He used all sorts of weapons, had him, Prabhupada says, had him thrown in fire, boiling oil from the top of a hill, underneath the legs of an elephant. He was administered poison. And at last the father himself took up a chopper to kill him. And so then Nrsingadev appeared and killed the demon. So, in the presence of Prahlad. So like that, no one can kill the devotee unless it's Krishna's desire. Otherwise, Krishna protects the devotees so much. And so then Prabhupada goes on that Arjuna was also protected. Even though all these big warriors with their heavy weapons, they were all there against him. But what could they do? Because Krishna was there for Arjuna. So then Srila Prabhupada goes through some biographical points about some of these people mentioned in the verse. First of all, Karna. He's the son of the sun god by Kunti, or Kunti by the sun god. And but because it was like an illegitimate birth, not by her husband, then she felt guilty, and so she sort of disposed of him, threw him in the Ganges in a basket, and then he was picked up by Adiratha and his wife Radha. Adiratha was a chariot driver. And they brought him up as their own child. And they didn't tell anyone that he wasn't their child, because then the question would be, oh, whose child is he? So anyway, Prabhupada gives a whole lot of biographical information about Karna. I think if you really want to know about the life of Karna and what he did and what happened, you can read through it yourselves. But just a couple of points. He was very charitable to Brahmins. Yes. So, he was very close to Duryodhana. And we mentioned last night about Draupadi's Swayamvara. He was excluded because of being apparently a Sudra, or the son of a Sudra, something like that. So then Arjuna won, yes. So immediately after that, there was a big fight. We mentioned that last night, between Arjuna and the others who were all defeated. And he fought Prabhupada says very valiantly against Arjuna, but Arjuna defeated him. Yeah. And Duryodhana liked Karna because of his rivalry with Arjuna. So Duryodhana gave him a kingdom. Yeah. So anyway, Karna was defeated a number of times. Arjuna, of course, but also by Bhima. Yeah. So anyway, we won't go through all the details, but if you want to, you can go through yourselves. Right. So he killed Gatotkacha, who was the son of Bhima. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, you can go through it if you'd like to know about Karna in more detail. Then Napta or Burishrava is more often, it seems to me, referred to as Burishrava. He was the son of Somadatta, a member of the Kuru family. His brother was Shalya, who was also a famous warrior and king. And they were there at the Swayamvara, and they were very impressed by Arjuna and advised Dhritarashtra's sons not to fight with the Pandavas. Yeah. But anyway, he did fight, and he fought on behalf of Duryodhana. And he killed 10 sons of Satyaki, but later Arjuna cut off his hands and Satyaki killed him. Then there's another one, Trigarta or Sukarma, who is not a well-known person. So anyway, you can read that. Then Jayadratha, of course, he's kind of notable because he was the main one who was responsible for the killing of Arjuna's son Abhimanyu. And therefore, Arjuna took a vow to kill him before sunset the next day. Otherwise, he'd commit suicide. So Arjuna was fighting through the Kaurava army. He was just there, just ready to kill Jayadratha. And it seemed the sun set. Yeah. Now, what is this? Yeah. So, anyway, there's different informations about him. His being, so anyway, then Jayadratha, so what happened? Well, Krishna made it, Prabhupada doesn't actually mention here, that Krishna made it seem like the sun had set. So everyone stopped fighting. And all the people guarding Jayadratha, they all stepped aside. But then Krishna suddenly made it apparent that the sun had not set. And so then Arjuna killed Jayadratha. And yeah. So anyway, his father, there was like a curse. Well, there was a benediction, from Lord Shiva upon Jayadratha, that whoever would cause his head to fall on the ground would die immediately. So therefore, when Arjuna killed Jayadratha, he threw Jayadratha's head a long way away to where Jayadratha's father was doing sacrifices. And it landed, the head of Jayadratha landed in the lap of his father, who immediately, what's this ghastly thing, threw the head off onto the ground, and his head broke into 7 pieces. Haribol. I tell you what, you got to watch out. Yeah, you got to watch out. So, all right, anyway, verse 17. It was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water for my thirsty horses. And it was due to my lack of esteem for my Lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver. For he has worshipped and offered services by the best men to attain salvation. Okay, yeah, so there's a good purport here. So first point Prabhupada makes is that Krishna is worshipped by impersonalists and devotees. Yeah, some think he's just some important historical, political figure, but he comes to show his pastimes, and he plays his different parts. So with Arjuna, he was a friend, but he was the perfect friend. Yeah. So because of that, because at least, with particularly the devotees in Vrindavan and Arjuna, it was to some degree, Krishna interacts with them so intimately they forget he's God. And so Arjuna did that, and in Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse or two in which Arjuna's lamenting like that when he sees the universal form, that he said that, I used to sit with you, eat with you, joke with you, and I would address you as, oh, my friend, and in different ways like that, kind of familiar. But now I see you're the Supreme Lord. But it was the internal potency, actually, Yoga Maya. So Prabhupada explains then that now Krishna's gone, Arjuna's conscious of the greatness of his friend, Krishna. Yes, but still, because of the intimate relationship under the influence of Yoga Maya, we can't take it that he was mistaken by being friendly and informal with Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, he did not have any ill estimation of the Lord, but rather intelligent men are attracted by the transcendental acting of the Lord with a pure, unalloyed devotee like Arjuna. So, okay, yeah. Then, second paragraph, this incident with Arjuna getting off his chariot to give his horse water in the middle of the battlefield. That water is scarce on the battlefield. And Prabhupada makes the point that animals and men working hard on a battlefield, sometimes they feel healthy, and sometimes wounded soldiers feel very thirsty at the time of death. I remember when I was in the hospital there, and my blood pressure was going down and down and down. I just became overwhelmingly thirsty. And actually from the anesthetic, I became just incredibly thirsty. Yeah. So anyway, people under different circumstances become very thirsty. And Prabhupada says sometimes they die on the battlefield just through lack of water. So, but what Arjuna did, he fired an arrow, and in this way, the arrow went in, and a fountain of water came out, and the horse got water. And that place is still there. And there's a fountain of water coming out. You been to Kurukshetra? Oh, you haven't. You been? Yeah, fountain of water coming out. And it's got a name, I forget the name, but that's where Arjuna fired the arrow to get water for his horse. Yes. Okay. Right. And Prabhupada makes the point that scientists don't know how to do it. The method is still unknown to the modern scientists. Penetrating rock with a sharp arrow to get water. So much for the scientists. Okay, so we go on to verse 18, which has no purport. O king, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me as, O son of Prita, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, and all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. So as we said, there's no purport. So we go on to verse 19, which has very short purport. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit, and loiter together. And at the time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry, sometimes, if there were any irregularity, I used to reproach him by saying, "My friend, you are very truthful." Oh, Krishna. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he, being the Supreme Soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. Yeah, so Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, following on from what Arjuna said, it's very nice, that seeing Krishna as all perfect, his transcendental pastimes with his pure devotees, they never lack anything, regardless of what type of relationship is there, friend, son, or lover. And the Lord relishes the reproaches of friends, reproach meaning like mild chastisement, of friends' parents or fiancés. He relishes those mild chastisements more than the Vedic hymns offered to him by great learned scholars and religionists in an official fashion. Yeah, that's the Lord. Bhakti is the thing. Bhakti is the thing. Verse 20, O Emperor, now I'm separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I've been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. That's interesting. So, of course, the point is, How could some ignoble cowherd men, means even by cowherd men's standards, they're pretty out of it, something like that. Yeah. How could they defeat Arjuna and then touch the bodies of Krishna's wives who were under the protection of Arjuna? Yeah, because he was taking them from Dwaraka to Hastinapur, to Mathura, to be under the shelter of, what's the great-grandson's name? Anyway, the great-grandson, what's his name? Famous king. Anyway, him. Yeah. Can't remember offhand. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada refers to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who researched Vishnu Purana and Brahma Purana, and there the story is of how some daughters of demigods pleased Ashtavakra Muni by their service and were blessed by him to have the Lord as their husband. But his body was really deformed, curved in 8 joints, and he used to move in an unusual curved way. So therefore the daughters of the demigods laughed at him, and Ashtavakra cursed them, that even though they'd get the Lord as their husband, they'd be kidnapped by rogues. So later on, they satisfied Ashtavakra with prayers, and he blessed them that even after being stolen by these rogues, they would regain their husband. Yes. So in order to keep the words of the great Muni, the Lord himself kidnapped his wives from the protection of Arjuna. Yeah. Otherwise, how would it be possible for these rogues to touch the wives of Krishna? Not possible. Only Krishna can touch his wives. And so that's how come those apparently ignoble cowherd men, they were able to touch the wives of Krishna because they were Krishna. Yeah. Right. So, yes. So there you go. That's verse 20. Now verse 21. I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrows, the same chariot drawn by the same horses, and I use them as the same Arjuna to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them at a moment's notice have become null and void. It's exactly like offering clarified butter, ghee, on ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on barren land. So the point is, Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, that we shouldn't be puffed up by borrowed plumes. And in this context, what it means is that all our energy, all our power, everything we've got is given to us by Krishna. So we shouldn't be proud of it like, I'm very clever at this or that or whatever it may be. So they act as long as the Lord desires, and when he wants to withdraw them, then we lose our powers, whatever they are. Yeah. Just like some people, they're born with normal hearing, but then in their youth, they lose their hearing. Or like, if you've heard of Stevie Wonder, have you heard of Stevie Wonder, the singer? He was born, and for the first, I think, 20-odd years of his life, he could see normally. But he got an eye condition and lost his eyesight completely. And he's totally blind now. Yeah. But these things happen by the arrangement of the Lord. Right. So Prabhupada makes the point that electrical energy is there, and therefore our lights are working and everything else. But as soon as the powerhouse stops supplying energy, you see they have load shedding in Hastinapur also, or Dwaraka. Yeah, they also got crazy electrical department. So then you can have nice, fittings and equipment and whatnot, but it just stops on the spot. So Prabhupada makes the point, material civilization without the Lord's blessings is like child's play. If parents allow, the child can play. As soon as they withdraw, the child has to stop. So therefore, human civilization has to be dovetailed with the blessings of the Lord. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, it is said here that a dead civilization and its activities are something like clarified butter on ashes, the accumulation of money by a magic wand, and the sowing of seeds in a barren land. Just like you remember, we put all the grass out there. It's not doing so well at all. I mean, Keshava Madhava Prabhu really tried hard. Anyway, what can you do? So, okay, devotees, that's the end of that section. Now we go on to the second section, which is Arjuna describes the departure of the Yadu dynasty, because that's a whole event in itself. This is from verse 22 to verse 27. So I am going to do what we normally do, read the translations of the verses first, and then go back over them again with the purports where there are. Okay, so 22 and 23. O King, since you've asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwaraka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmins. And as a result, they all became intoxicated with wine made of putrefied rice and fought among themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. So let's read. We're going through to 27. So verse 24. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. 15 to 26. O King, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. Wow, that's heavy, isn't it? And then verse 27. Now I'm attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they're impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. All right, so let's go back over them again. 22 and 23. O King, since you've asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwaraka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmins, and as a result they all became intoxicated with wine made of putrefied rice, and fought among themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. Yes, so as it happens, there's no purport to those 2 verses together. So we go on to verse 24. So Arjuna says, factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. So, yeah, according to the anthropologists, there's nature's law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. Okay. Yeah, well, that's true according to them. They don't know behind the laws of nature is Krishna. So therefore we should understand whenever there's peace in the world, it's due to the will of the Lord. And whenever there's upheaval, it's also due to the will of the Lord. Because, Prabhupada quotes the famous saying, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So when there's disobedience of the Lord's rules, there's war. So therefore, we as devotees, Prabhupada says, the surest way to the path of peace, therefore, is dovetailing everything to the established rule of the Lord. Yes. So the actual official rule is in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 27, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat jahoshi dadati yat tapasya sakontaya tat karushva mad arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you sacrifice or whatever you give away in charity, you must do as a service to the Lord. Or, as Prabhupada says here specifically, don't do it against the will of the Lord. So we have to learn how to discriminate between activities which are pleasing to the Lord and activities which are not. It's extremely important. Those are the criteria by which we may judge what to do and what not to do in any given situation. So, yeah. And there's no room for personal whims. We have to be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. So verses 25 and 26. O King, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger yadu to kill the smaller. Right. So there's a purport here. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, in the material world, the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest are laws, because in the material world there's disparity between conditioned souls due to everyone's desire to lord it over the material resources, and Prabhupada says this is the root cause of conditioned life. Yes. That's amazing, isn't it? The root cause of conditioned life is the struggle. Who will lord it over the material resources the most? Yeah. So, anyway, Maya facilitates the imitation lords by creating disparity between stronger and weaker in every species. Just like you see, I don't know if you've seen, maybe you haven't, this chap Musk, right, took over Twitter, and the whole thing's just a really drastic mess from what they say. Incredible mess. It may just collapse completely, and he paid $40 billion for it. Just think what we could have done with $40 billion. But because he's not all there, actually. He's intoxicated with wealth. Therefore, he's just completely made a terrible mess. Because he thinks he's stronger. So in the spiritual world, Prabhupada says there's no such disparity between stronger and weaker or bigger or smaller, anything like that. No struggle for existence. Everyone's eternal. And there's no disparity because everyone wants to serve the Lord. No one wants to imitate him. He's the proprietor and enjoyer, but here by the spell of Maya, he's forgotten in this world. Therefore, everyone is conditioned by the law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. All right, and then verse 27. Now I'm attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they're impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Okay, so there's a purport here, pretty substantial. 4 paragraphs. I mean, that's pretty substantial. Let's just go through it quickly. So, here Arjuna is referring to the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield, Bhagavad Gita. Not just for Arjuna, but those instructions are left behind for everyone. So we don't have to go through, Prabhupada makes the point, we don't have to go through all the Vedic literatures. Just read Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, now, here, after Krishna has left this world, Arjuna wants to remember his teachings in a very focused way, to show that Bhagavad Gita can be consulted at any time. Prabhupada puts it like that. Yeah, at any time, in any place. It's not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements, which may embarrass one in some critical hour. Right. So then the second paragraph. So Bhagavad Gita is there, so we can take instructions from Krishna even when he's not visible, at least visible to us. He's always with us, but now he's not visible in that sense. Material senses can't perceive him, but still he can incarnate in to our senses in a suitable manner. And therefore Bhagavad Gita is also his incarnation. And Prabhupada says, one can derive the same benefits from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. So then we go on to the third paragraph. So in Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 factors of knowledge. We should all know those, actually. They're listed out here. The Lord, the living being, material nature, time and space, and activity. Prabhupada says the process of activity, or karma. The first 2, the Supreme Lord and the living being, are one in quality. There's a difference in quantity. And nature, material nature, was the third point. So Prabhupada says, nature is inert matter displaying the interaction of 3 different modes, and eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of the material nature. That's interesting, isn't it? And the activities, the process of activity was the 5th one. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. So Prabhupada gives a sort of an analysis of them, that numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, the Lord, the living being, nature, and time, they're eternal. 2, 3, and 4 are under, that means the living being, nature, and time are under the number 1's control, the Lord, but he's under no one's control. Then number 5, the process of activity, material activity, is beginningless, karma, but can be rectified by becoming spiritual. So 1 and 2, the Lord and us, are cognizant and have a sense of identity. But number 2 is different from 1. But Vedic wisdom can eradicate that because it liberates 2, the living being. So the sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but in number 2, the living entity, Prabhupada says it's a wishful desire only. This difference is the distinction between number 1 and number 2, the Lord and the living entity. Otherwise, there's no difference. Therefore, number 1 and number 2 are eternally one and different. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the whole instruction of Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. Boy, that's a really amazing explanation, isn't it? That's really good. So then we come to the 4th paragraph, last paragraph. I mean, it's a big purport, actually. So, in Bhagavad Gita, living entity and the Lord are described as Sanatan, or eternal. His abode is also eternal. So we should go back there. And the process for doing that is called Sanatan Dharma. And basically, the main thing is to get free from material identification and be situated in our real condition, who we really are, the eternal servants of the Lord. So the process of liberation, it can be seen in different stages, Prabhupada says. First of all, fruit of activity. Secondly, empiric philosophy. And third, devotional service up to realization of the Lord. And so the last one, devotional service, to the point of realization of the Lord, is done. That is done by dovetailing everything in relation to the Lord. So Prabhupada goes on, prescribed duties can purify the sinful mind, and one can come to the level of knowledge. And then this becomes, or can become, the basis of devotional service. And Prabhupada goes on, while one is still doing research, the knowledge is called Gyan. But when that knowledge becomes realized as the solution of life, then one becomes situated in devotional service, not just Gyan. So Bhagavad Gita begins by discriminating the soul from matter. It's eternal. Body and mind change and prepare for another miserable material life. So that's it for tonight, devotees. We'll see you on Monday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.